everybody, and welcome to the Harder Not Smarter podcast. Today's guest, we have Lasorsa, who is a former Marine infantry officer, Naval Academy grad, Wall Street derivatives trader, and now correct me if I'm right, it was that financial litigation. Now, Ron?
Alternative asset manager is what they call it.
There it is. But he's picking a fight with some of the biggest entities out there, specifically supporting the veteran community. I'm sure anybody in the Marine Corps is 100% known about this, but a lot of people in the military, the Camp Lejeune toxic water issue, and a lot of the other toxic chemicals that have been found on bases that have been affecting the veterans or the service members and their families that have carried over. There's been back and forth stuff going back decades at this point. And Ron is has created the Victory Litigation Fund to go after those responsible and help get funds for the veterans who have been affected by this. So Ron, I'm excited to hear your story, both on the your service side and then your story of how you got to where you are today, taking on this behemoth on the for the sake of veterans.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to your audience. This is an important message, and it starts with education, right? We as veterans don't know how badly we're being screwed over, and just how much money is at stake. Many of these attorneys and hedge funds are going to become rich. When I say rich, there are billions and billions of dollars at stake. And, we can talk about, starting with 3M, where we had 250,000 veterans who have been affected by tinnitus, $6 billion settlement, but they got woefully underpaid. And a very, very, very small group of people got wealthy on this by taking anywhere between 40 and 50% of the settlement award. And so once you're made aware of kind of the disproportionate benefit paid to these lawyers and hedge fund managers versus what the average veteran got, people in your audience are going to get pissed off. And that's good. Right.
So essentially, what you're saying with this was the hearing aid or the hearing protection stuff.
I was about to say, I saw like those ads all over the place about like claim your money and stuff like that. Like I had heard like you get like pennies on the dollar. It's not even worth like signing up for that. What do hedge fund managers have to do with any of this?
Oh my God.
Why are they involved?
So litigation finance is a very obscure asset class. When I say asset class, you got stocks, you got bonds, you got real estate. You have venture equity where schmucks in Silicon Valley, throw a dart at a dartboard to put money behind these tech companies. Those are asset classes. Litigation finance is the name suggests, financing lawsuits, right? And they're picking winners and losers. And these lawsuits are extremely lucrative. And there are many different ways for non-attorneys like myself to get involved. And so I have been immersed in this asset class for longer than I was in the service and on Wall Street. And as I was saying before this, there is no more competitive. I'm mixed martial artist, Marine Corps infantry officer, economic pirate on Wall Street for over a decade. And there is no more competitive, vicious, or lucrative environment that I've ever been in.
And first, for anybody that's not watching this on YouTube, the image that you might have of Ron in your head, being Academy grad, Marine officer, Wall Street, and in the litigation space, you're probably thinking suit and tie. This guy has blue collar badass written across his shirt, 2 full sleeve tattoos. And it's like there's this terminology of economic pirate and all that stuff. He's basically the antithesis of everything that you're mentioning. So if you're not watching on YouTube, jump on YouTube, see his how the guy's full persona right here on the screen. I love how you're doing this, because didn't you say you only did one class of law school before you realized that law school, the legal community, and everything is just not for you, but you still have you still see that you can provide value in that community?
Absolutely. It was a 3 hour law class, civil procedure, and the thing that turned me off was I had to buy this book. Um, it's called Black's Law Dictionary, and the thing is this thick. And we go in and we open it up, and the first thing out of the law professor's mouth is, the reason we have this book is because we've made up a language to charge people money. And that pissed me off because I had just come out of an adversarial divorce, right? I was on Wall Street making a shitload of money, and we'll get into it, but both of my sons were born with neurobehavioral effects that I've since linked back to the Camp Lejeune water litigation. So you combine a difficult marriage with a lot of money. I was going through an adversarial divorce, and the divorce attorney that I had was an asshole. And I asked him a question, and he's like, well, I don't have time to explain that to you, and you wouldn't understand it. And I'm like, motherfucker, please. Like, who are you talking to? And so I decided if it was going to be about money, I quit Wall Street and I became a paralegal to work on my own legal case. And then I figured if I was going to be a paralegal, I might as well go to law school. And then once he said that, I'm like, oh no, I can't do this, man. This is going to crush my soul. My wife's divorce attorney suggested that she get a restraining order against me to leverage it. They made it up, and they kept me from seeing my kids for 2 years just by virtue of the legal system. And it was during that time that I realized that if I could get chewed alive in the system, what are they going to do to somebody that doesn't have my background? And that's when I became a reformer. And just so you understand, there's a way to own law firms without being a lawyer, which I did. I owned a law firm, started it, and sold it in less than a year for $40 million. So when I say that this is the most profitable asset class in the world, I've been a millionaire several times, but I've had it ripped out of my hands because it's also an extremely vicious environment. So unique background, but I am battle tested in this. And we're speaking now where I've just won the biggest victory of any career I've ever had: military, Wall Street, and now litigation finance.
So tell me about what you have with that now. So you started because your kids were showing neurological issues because of your time that you spent at Lejeune. I know that you had a family tragedy associated with it. Where did that start, or where did this process start, and where are you now in the litigation with Camp Lejeune?
Well, so going back, me being in litigation finance, I started a law firm, Alpha Law, which was a District of Columbia law firm. There are now 2 jurisdictions. When I was doing it, when I started it, there was only 1 jurisdiction, which was the District of Columbia, that allows non-attorneys to own law firms. Now, Arizona created something called an ABS, alternative business structure, where companies can own it. District of Columbia, you have to be an individual. And I had hooked up with some questionable folks. Turns out 2 of them were felons, unbeknownst to me. But embedded in all of this is organized crime, as you can imagine. And what people don't realize is that every class action and mass tort has at least 20% of the docket. Some instances, it could be as much as 80% fake claims to pad the docket. And the way the scam is run, or was run, was American health insurance companies had outsourced their call center operations to India. And one of the guys I was working with was an Indian national, and he went out and he set up call centers in India where they would buy healthcare records from the health insurance call centers, and they would file fake claims. And so
I don't know how you can legally sell healthcare records. Is that a thing?
you can't. That's the scam. It's theft. The three phrases are conspiracy, mail and wire fraud, and identity theft. And there was actually a lawyer named Michael Watts. I'll name names. I don't give a fuck. He was prosecuted by the Justice Department back in 2015 for filing 40,000 fake claims in the BP oil scam. And the guy represented himself, and you know who wound up in jail? The lead generators, not the lawyers. And so we can talk about the problems, but I really want to focus on the solutions that I've come up with. And the solutions I've come up with, it's basically, you know, I'm familiar with all of the weaknesses of the current industry, and all you got to do is do it better than the way they're doing it. It's not rocket science. And so I have built a model that establishes the ethical high watermark in the industry.
And what is that? What is the ethical high watermark?
I got a lot of fancy phrases, right? This is referred to as tokenized litigation finance prime brokerage. And so it has a lot of different concepts in there, but we can get into it. But look, there are two aspects of this. There is the practice of law, where you have lawyers trying cases, and that can be difficult and complicated, right? And so this model relies upon lawyers, but they have to be ethical lawyers, right? They can't be the scumbags that I had been running with previously. But the business of law is very straightforward. And there are three aspects, right? There's case origination, there's case management, and there's case finance, right? Those three elements are generally referred to as legal services. And there is a legal services industry that is basically a parasite, right? Providing these services to lawyers. Because lawyers typically are not very good business people. And they're arrogant pricks, and they would much rather outsource the blocking and tackling to the minions, right? And how do you get a lawyer's business? Well, you either got to suck dick or bend the knee. And I don't like doing either. So, you know, what I've come up with, and again, we can talk about the problems, but I really want to focus on the solutions, is this is an opportunity for the veteran community to effectuate a raid on a soft target, in the sense that, I'll use an analogy, okay? That the American Indian is very similar to the American veteran, in the sense that it's a warrior culture, but both communities are prone to, you know, poverty, addiction, and suicide, right? And it wasn't until the certain American Indian tribes adopted a tribal industry that they were able to lift themselves out of poverty, right? Everybody, I don't know if you guys have ever been to an Indian casino, right? But it was only when they adopted gaming as their tribal industry. We veterans have an opportunity to embrace litigation finance and legal services as our tribal industry. And it's through that tokenized litigation finance, that I can redirect billions of dollars back into the veteran community, right? Because it's a zero-sum game, and we just got to be better than the other guys. And it's not hard, because they're fat, stupid, and slow. And as a Marine Corps officer, right, we will set the ethical high watermark here, and we will outperform them. So, you know, these are bold statements, but I've done everything in this industry wrong, right? Again, I've referred to myself as an economic pirate. I'm not shining my halo, right? I was in with some very unscrupulous folks, but what really changed things for me was in 2016, I lost my youngest son um, to an overdose. My son had neurobehavioral issues. Both my sons did. And so medication at a young age became part of the treatment, right? We could talk about the pharmaceutical industry all day long.
Mm-hmm.
They love to push pills. And both my boys became accustomed to medicating issues, and both of them suffered from drug addiction. And my youngest son had a heroin overdose at the age of 20 in 2016, and that rocked my world. And that made me look at who I was and what I was doing. And so, you mentioned the tattoos, and I had a sea change, and I no longer wanted to be the man I was. And so I've become the man I need to be in order to make a difference for the veteran community. So, and that hasn't been an easy process, right? We're coming up on 10 years since my son passed. And I got to tell you, I struggled with complex PTSD. I still do, right? People think I'm batshit crazy, but hopefully in the best way. I've been able to turn my pain into something productive. And really, so I understand whereof I speak when veterans have nobody, feel like they have nobody to talk to or no resources, and they wind up, making their last decision. And so with every fiber of my being, I truly believe that I can help those that need it most through this sense of community, but more importantly, taking the resources from those that are only interested in getting rich and redirecting it into our community, right? To provide the resources that the government hasn't, and really differentiate my model with other 501c3s, right? The veteran nonprofit community is saturated. Many of us want to do the right thing, but we're all chasing the same altruistic dollar. And I've made the decision that I'm not going to ask for it. I'm going to fucking take it from the bad guys and put it back into our community. So
We had Kyle Bucket on the show a while back, and he was talking about some similar stuff with the problem with nonprofits is that, if you run a sports apparel company, you're only competing with other sports apparel companies. But if you run a nonprofit, you're competing against every other nonprofit out there because they're all trying to scramble for the same, family funds, wealthy investors, corporations. The pools of money are all the same, and so if you're trying to start a nonprofit, it's very difficult to establish yourself as a credible nonprofit and also get the attention of the potential donors. So if you're mentioning that this is a way for extra funds to get injected into the system, that's a remarkable way to add value into an already fairly saturated industry.
have any of you guys ever tried to raise money
Yeah,
from wealthy
it's
individuals?
it's a pain.
Well, it's soul crushing because you're going in there trying to pitch your idea or pitch your cause, and you have these smug fucks on the other side of the table, right? Deeming whether or not your cause or your idea is worthy or not. I refuse to do that. I will not anymore, and that's been part of the issue.
There's still a quid pro quo when it comes to raising money. Like it is very much what's in it for me. Like there's got to be more to attach to it than just a tax break. And usually it has something to do with like what sort of like PR am I getting out of this? Like what's your platform look like? How many eyes am I going to get on this? And is this a win for me from a marketing standpoint in the end? I think that's what a lot of nonprofits probably do wrong is that they don't focus enough on building out a good brand and having like a very large platform in order to push that out on. But to your point, fuck raising money and let's just go get it.
Yeah.
I'm with
let's take it. Yeah, absolutely. And this is a raid on a soft target, right? These guys are very comfortable, and they need to be challenged in the most in the most ethical way, right?
Who are these guys that you're referring to? Is this the lawyers? Is this the people that have done the wrong? Who are we talking about here?
Well, it's the whole industry in the sense that it's very small. So the area that I focus on is what's referred to as contingency fee law. All right, there are two types of law. You have the lawyers that get paid by the hour, and then you have the lawyers that get a cut of the legal fees, right? And so we're talking about in a lot of education involved here. You have mass tort and class action, right? Class action is where you have a large number of individuals that have been wronged by either one or a handful of companies, and lawyers will sue on behalf of the class, and everybody is treated the same. That's class action, right? So Visa overcharges you something, the lawyers sue, and everybody winds up, all the individuals wind up getting $12 or something stupid when the lawyer walks away with millions. Mass tort is different. Same concept, large class, small number of defendants, a trial, but in mass tort, each individual is treated individually, where they get compensated based upon the severity of their injuries, right? And so 3M was a mass tort. Camp Lejeune is this funky little thing that's neither mass tort or class action. It was really a special interest bill slipped into the broader PACT Act bill, but we can talk about that. But there are fewer than 100 law firms that really specialize in this shit. So you're talking about the apex predators in the legal industry. And these are the guys that make billions of dollars associated with these claims. And it's the same cast of characters every time. So it's a cartel of sorts, right? And it's very difficult to break into. I just happened to break into it, as I said, with Alpha Law by our ability to originate a large number of cases. Now, 20% of them were proven to be fake, but, again, as I said, I'm not shining my halo. And I have since then become an SEC whistleblower. And then I had signed a non-disclosure agreement saying I would never talk about this stuff, but I intentionally violated that non-disclosure agreement. We're all warriors here. What's the best way to get out of an ambush, right? Run straight through it. And so I intentionally violated my non-disclosure agreement, incurred a $607,000 personal judgment, launched a securities offering, because when you launch a securities offering, you have to disclose your judgments. And then I filed a lawsuit and put forth all my evidence. So these are unconventional tactics, but very effective, because now I have put forth all of this evidence into the Camp Lejeune litigation, and they don't know what to do. They're in the kill box and they don't know. I've won. And so again, complicated, but it's only through these actions that I'm now able to make this opportunity available to the broader veteran community.
Can you talk to the audience what exactly the Camp Lejeune situation is? What the case is against whoever the case is against, and where you are right now in that process.
Sure. So we're all aware of the PACT Act, right? It was the largest expansion of healthcare benefits in American history, and it spans. It's a very comprehensive law that goes all the way back to Vietnam and Agent Orange, all the way up to the global war on terror. And we as veterans have been subjected and exposed to all manner of toxins during the course of our service. And as such, many of us have gotten ill. A lot have lost their lives because of this toxic exposure. And originally estimated at $797 billion, but as anything with the government, it's going to expand over time. Now, inserted in the PACT Act was a very small special interest bill. The lawyer, Ed Bell, bragged about, he no longer brags about it because I shoved it in his face, but before he was bragging about him spending $7 million of his own money to lobby Congress to get this special interest bill created. Now, the Camp Lejeune Justice Act covers one base, Camp Lejeune, from 1958 to 1987. So you had to be there. You know why? I was there from 90 to 94, and my sons didn't qualify. But you know why they did that? Because that lazy fuck only had access to a government database to show housing from 1958 to 1987. And he didn't give a shit enough about the veterans. The Camp Lejeune issue is still going on. These are forever chemicals. So people who are stationed there right now are still currently being exposed. But he didn't give a shit about the veterans who might have been sick. He only cared about getting rich enough for himself. And so that was the bill. And he only gave in the bill 2 years for veterans to sign up, which again is outside of the norm for these mass tort and class action, right? Again, the way he wrote the law was to benefit him and a small handful of lawyers, not to benefit veterans. So I started punching him in the face on that issue, and he no longer brags about being the one who wrote the bill. But claims had been assembled, over these 2 years, and I had to take certain steps. In order to launch this counterattack, first I had to violate my NDA and go to mandatory arbitration, and that took about 9 months. And then what I did on January 18th is I filed a lawsuit against Ed Bell for 2 charges. Number one, negligence, because he knew or should have known that these bad actors were going to submit bad claims. But the second charge was a violation of my 14th Amendment rights to equal protection of law, where, these are legal terms, but he arbitrarily and capriciously set the dates of the eligibility, right? He had no basis to cut it off then other than access to this website. So I filed that on January 18th, right? And there are certain rules associated with the court. And you know what this guy did? He's supposed to be one of the top litigators in the country. He filed his response to me 4 days late, which gives me an automatic default judgment, right? And I did it in such a way where the local rules in the Eastern District of North Carolina say because he's a lawyer, electronic service was sufficient. But I belt and suspended it by getting a process server, filed it on electronically on the 18th, but then I had my process server serve his office on the 19th. And you know what he did? When my lawyers they know the rules, and so they're scumbags to the core. And so what he did was he had his receptionist say he was out of the country, right? Now, That's a trick because you actually have to hand it to the guy. But you know what he did? I have an affidavit from my process server that lays this out. We served him at 11:30. The guy called me at 11:48, called me from his phone to my cell phone, right? So when I filed my default judgment to say that he was properly served, he lied, committed perjury. And then that's when I laid down the phone records. So now he's stuck. So procedurally, you file the initial complaint, he defaulted, I filed my motion for default judgment, and then I put forth my proposed final judgment order.
Did you guys have a conversation at 11:48?
Yeah, 10 minutes.
What an idiot.
Arrogant. The arrogance of this man. And then he lied about it. Right? So, no integrity. And he knows he's stuck. And so what I did with my proposed final judgment order, I put forth what I referred to as the special master audit. And I said, what I want to audit the whole fucking docket to cure of the conspiracy, mail and wire fraud, and identity theft. And now the court is stuck because the number of claims has swelled to over 550,000 claims, right? And at least 50% of those claims are fake. And so I have all the bad actors in a trap. And what happened was, after I did that, he filed his original lawyer. Fired as he should have, because they screwed up. And it was just last Friday that he appointed replacement counsel. So now they have to come with me. They have to come talk to me. Over 95% of all civil litigation settles before a hearing or trial. And they don't want this going before the judge because the Justice Department has been kicking his ass in this. Now, the Camp Lejeune litigation is law, and it's only the third time the federal government has allowed itself to be sued, right? First was when they intentionally gave African-American men syphilis, right? That was one. The second instance is when they irradiated pregnant women, right? And now the third is that they knowingly poisoned Marines and their family members stationed at Camp Lejeune. So this sets precedent, right? That now all of the PACT Act veterans, as of last week, there have been over 1.5 million veterans screened by the VA, and about 75% of them have been deemed sick enough to, right? So it's all million of those veterans who are entitled to compensation now, right? So this is a can of worms that they didn't want to open. They were fighting, but they fucked up, and now they're going to find out just literally what we veterans deserve. And we're not asking, we're going to take it. And the court, it's stuck at the court. So I haven't been able to get anybody to publicize this because they're all in bed with all the reporters that report on the legal services industry are reluctant to report on this because it's so embarrassing for them. But we have them. We have them. And so with this final judgment order, right, I have the ability to hire veterans to help me do this audit, right? And with my pricing, it's about $7.5 billion that they have to cough up, all right?
Who's they? Is it going to be the federal government?
It's the federal government. Now, that money would have otherwise gone to lawyers and hedge funds and the traditional legal services industry.
Mm-hmm.
But I can take it from them. I'm going to take it from them, and I'm going to redirect that money back into our community. So we don't have to ask, we don't have to go to other rich fucks and beg for money to heal our community. We're going to take it.
What is the plan that you envision funneling the money towards?
Well, I got 3 different ways I can do it, right? I can do it through the Victory Litigation Fund, which is a venture equity fund. These are names that are common in the finance industry. So it's a venture equity fund, which means gives me the broadest latitude to do things. I can invest in companies. It's basically, I can do whatever the fuck I want, right? I can work with 501c3s where I offer what I refer to as a 10x impact enhancement. For every dollar I take in, I'm going to pay out 10x to investors. Why 10x? Because nobody pays 10x, right? I can do it. I can do that for individual investors, and I can do that for 501c3s. And then the money that I make, right, which is going to be a shitload, I'm going to reinvest 89% back into the veteran community. Why 89%? Because I'm a class of 89 graduate at the Naval Academy, right? So it is the most altruistic model out there, right? And if I line my model up against their model, I win all fucking day. I win all day. And by the way, I have the right to purchase the 1-800-VETERAN brand, 1-800-VETERAN.com and the 1-800-VETERAN toll-free number. And then from that, it will be an umbrella marketing campaign for all the various elements to this. You can invest, you can donate, you can get legal services. We're going to set up an alternative healthcare system to the VA that focuses on healing rather than treating. It's really an ambitious project. And me telling this story 3 months ago, there was a high degree of skepticism, but it's only now that the case is ripe. They're in the kill box. They got nowhere else to go but deal with me, that I can now start banging the drum on this to make people aware of it.
Talk to me a little bit about the Victory Litigation Fund. Like, what does that look like? What are you looking to do with that, and how is the money going to flow in there once this case, assumed, goes a distance and you're able to recoup this money?
Yeah. So the way that I set up the fund, again, setting the ethical high watermark, the way that companies raise money, these funds, there are different types of securities law, right? There are 3 different flavors, if you will. There's Reg CF, which is crowdfunding, which allows you to raise $5 million each year from unaccredited investors, anybody that over the age of 18. And that's important because litigation finance is an asset class that was not available to regular people, right? So I have a $5 million Reg CF going on right now. I have a $15 million Reg D. Now, Reg D is for accredited investors, and that's the traditional institutional people, high net worth, things like that. I really want to work with 501c3s with that. But then the third flavor is called a Reg A plus, and that gives me the opportunity to raise $75 million a year from anybody over the age 18. And I'm going to do all 3. And you can do this every year, right? So that is the way for me to put money back into the community. You give me $1, and then the use of proceeds is in those 3 different elements: case origination, case management, and case finance, right? And so that's the use of proceeds. And that's all laid out in these securities documents, because when you create a Reg CF, Reg D, and Reg A, you have to lay out all of the risks, right? All of the disclaimers. So I have them right now. I have not been actively marketing these services. I've raised about $1 million over the last 18 months, but it's 10 veterans that I've raised the money from. So I'm being very selective in who I take capital from, right? There are 3 criteria for the people that I want to work with. Number 1 criteria is altruism, right? If you're only in it for the money, I don't want to know your name, right? Number 2 is intelligence. This is complicated stuff, right? I want to make sure that you understand what you're getting into. And then the third, I say ambition, but it's really more determination, right? Because these guys aren't going to just lay down. They're going to fight. And you can't, you have to be willing to let me be me and be controversial and punch these guys in the nose and, speak the way that I'm speaking now. You mentioned my tattoos. And I literally, after my son passed away, I wanted to disassociate myself from that class of people as much as possible. And so I've embraced, right? Think of it as the enlisted community per se, right? When you're an officer, and again, I'm a Naval Academy graduate, you tend to be more country club than honky tonk, right? And I'm not that type of person anymore. I'm smarter. I'm tougher and I'm more determined than those folks. And so I have a tremendous amount of respect for enlisted and staff NCOs and, the people that make the military run. So I'm the furthest thing from, what I once was. And honestly, I feel much more authentic this way. So that's, that's why I talk the way that I talk, I look the way that I look, and I act the way that I act.
So going full circle, because I'm just trying to wrap my head around this whole process, and I feel like I'm starting to get there. How you have to secure the rights to represent all of these people now, right? Like that are part of this class action lawsuit, correct? Like, is that the next step, or how does that work?
So what I've done is I've arranged it in such a way where there was an analog to this with the 9/11 fund, right? After 9/11, there was a small group of people who were also poisoned, and they didn't do it on legal fees. They did it as a fixed, well, they did it as a percentage. But in this, my lawsuit, my proposed final judgment order is to audit the docket. I'm not a law firm. I'm going to audit the docket as special master. And then with the broader PACT Act stuff, I have to lobby Congress to change the law. So there's a political action committee associated with this. But I want to do the $1 million, or rather the 1 million+ claims for the broader PACT Act class as a fixed flat fee, right? Where the law, the PACT Act law, identifies a whole bunch of illnesses that are now presumptive, right? Where they say if you have this illness and you serve, you have been presumed to have gotten this illness during your military service, right? Ed Bell, by the way, has gotten his ass kicked, and the court is making him try cases before getting into the bellwether trial stage to prove presumption, and then presumptive illnesses, and then specific illnesses. They've set the bar really high for him because they now know, based on my evidence, just how dirty this guy is. So they've made it unduly burdensome for veterans. They're kicking Ed Bell's ass, but to the disadvantage of the veterans. And so we have to change the law, right, under the next administration to make it easier for veterans to get the benefits that they deserve. So it all starts with picking the first fight, right? And then from there, building on that momentum to fix it for the veteran community. Because right now, nobody else is talking about this shit. You have politicians that cry crocodile tears for veterans, but they don't do shit. They send the money overseas. They give it to illegal aliens. It's now time for veterans to start asking and start telling. And we have far more power than we give ourselves credit for, right? And so it takes a leader, somebody taking point. And believe me, I've taken a lot of shots, but they haven't killed me yet. And I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going until we win.
So what's that process looking like? You mentioned several different things. You have to get all the veterans screened and validate that their illness is associated with their time at Camp Lejeune. You mentioned getting law change, which is a whole different process. What are your priorities right now to make sure things happen in the right order, so that things can move as smoothly as possible?
The first thing is getting this special master audit approved by the court and then started, right? That's in the works. That's about ready to, that cake is almost baked, right? Judges just got to sign off on my order. Then I need to start the process and begin delivering the message. It's all about marketing, right? And that's why this podcast is so beneficial, because I can now start getting this message out. Then I got to hire. My plan requires me to hire at least 1,000 veterans to pull off this, this special master audit, right? And it's my intention to hire veterans instead of utilizing existing resources within the system. The political
What are you
angle.
hiring them to do? Are they going to be looking through medical records? What is
No,
it?
no. I can use AI, I can use technology for a lot of that stuff. It's boots on the ground. One of the weaknesses of the current system and one of the scams is that everything is done electronically. These lawyers don't have face-to-face meetings with any of these plaintiffs. It's all DocuSign. And so the vast majority of the people that I employ, I'm going to refer to as field agents, where they go to the person's house. Here's a claim, right? This is who they say they are. This is their address, because all this information has already been collected on those 550,000 claims. They're going to the person's house, they're knocking on the door, and they're getting 2 forms of ID. And if you're not who you say you are, living where you say you live at, then the claim is disqualified. So in this initial effort, it's to knock out as many of the fraudulent claims as possible, right? The second group of folks have already been screened by the VA. So presumably they're authenticated as well. We go through the same process, right? And it's through that process, I'm charging the law firms, right? I'm taxing the scumbag lawyers $5,000 a case. Now, why $5,000 a case? Because they had probably only spent about $2,500 to originate the case. And I'm pricing it in such a way where they abandon the docket, right? They abandon it, they give me the claim. If I get the claim, I have to raise enough money to audit the docket. It's only going to cost me about, between $500 and $1,000 to audit a case. But I set my fee for those services. There is no fee cap right now for these lawyers, and they're trying to take between 40 and 50%. I'm going to charge either 20% so that the claimant gets more of their award, or I cap it at 50 grand. And the claims right now are going anywhere between $100,000 and $500,000 per claim. So 250 grand is the break-even point. If it's a $100,000 claim, I only get 20 grand, whereas a lawyer might have gotten 50. At 250 grand, right, I'm getting 50 grand. If it's above 250 grand, I cap myself out at 50. So if you have a higher value claim, you're keeping more. So I've tried to structure it in such a way where the plaintiff benefits by doing business with me. Again, guys, this isn't a business plan, it's a battle plan. And I've looked at each of the weak points of the opposing side, and I've structured it in such a way that I beat them point by point. And a judge, when we go through my plan, the judge's role is to make sure that the plaintiff's rights are secured. So I've created it in such a way where it benefits the plaintiff, it benefits the court, and it benefits the government, right? I'm only attacking those predatory and unscrupulous lawyers who are committing conspiracy, mail and wire fraud, and identity theft. So I only have to throw a few bodies in the courtyard. I don't have to, alienate the entire legal community. But if you're doing wrong, your day is coming.
And for the families that feel that they qualify for this and maybe either didn't know about it or weren't originally eligible, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you to figure out what their next steps should be?
Well, what I would say is, let me win the fight first, right? This is the first communication, and I don't want to be one of those guys that's making unverifiable claims, right? So everything that I've said right up to this podcast is all independently verifiable, right? If you want to get in touch with me on LinkedIn. If you want to Google Lasorsa v. Bell, and the whole case is laid out, right, on the internet for everybody to see. But the first step is to win this fight. And we're going into, we're already deep into election season. And you got one side that is supporting veterans, and you have another side that's supporting illegal aliens. Which side do you guys want to be on? Right? So we all have to take certain action steps, right? But the prize is in sight. And we can literally fund all of the issues that are critical to our community. Homelessness, right? Food insecurity, toxic exposure, an alternative to the VA healthcare system that focuses on healing rather than treating, right? And then PTSD, suicide prevention. Those are the 4 pillars that are, I believe, are most critical to our community. And there are billions of dollars available simply by, executing my model that we can repurpose in. And then you have, veteran entrepreneurship, right? Instead of going to a VC, come to me and I will fund those businesses with the money, that I take 89%. And I'm going to put everything, again, we're putting technology in here as well. This is all going to be on the blockchain, right? This isn't Ron Lasorsa saying I'm a saint. No, I'm going to put it on the blockchain. Every dollar comes in, it's rev share. And it's an immutable record where people say, this is the use of proceeds. Right now, litigation finance is completely opaque. Nobody gives up shit. I'm going to make everything transparent, right? Put it on the blockchain and people can see exactly where the money's going.
Do you already have a team set up that's going to be able to execute on? I know I'm putting the cart before the horse, but you mentioned several pillars. Do you already have organizations you've pegged as an organization you're going to want to fund? Have you already had communication with them in terms of setting up these entities to make everything transparent and manage the assets coming in? Do you already have a team of people you're looking to bring on?
Many of these resources are off the shelf, right? So, in terms of veteran entrepreneurship, there are a bunch of organizations. I'm working with one group. I've raised over $1 million using a group called Local Vest, which is it's a crowdfunding source. In fact, I believe that's how our introduction came from. So I've raised over $1 million with them, funding them, but I'm putting out the message, come to me. Blockchain, off the shelf, right? Really, the only thing that I need to do is hire the veterans for these field agents, right? But there are organizations that work, that focus on, veteran employment. And so again, I have those contacts. Everything is lined up. Everything is lined up, but obviously, getting the message out, I want more. And my preference, look, you can't be all things to all people, right? And so I have I won't disclose the name of the 501c3, but they're naming me to their board, and I'm going to help them raise money. There will be 501c3s that understand and want to join the mission. There will be many that don't. And that's okay too, right? It's the power of attraction, as opposed to me trying to, sell this message, right? Do your due diligence on who I am and what I've said I've done and what I say I can do. And if it resonates to you, come to me, right? If it doesn't, keep doing what you're doing. I don't want to, interrupt anybody else's altruistic mission. A lot of times these 501c3s are set up as vanity projects and they don't really do what they say they're going to do. And so I don't want to get into that mess, right? If you come to me, I have certain criteria that I'm looking for, but what you don't have, I can coach you up, right? So like I said, altruism, intelligence, and then determination or ambition, however you want to characterize it.
Hell yeah. I got something, Kevin. What's the timeline look like? When do you expect like all this stuff to start kind of coming to a head and being able to hit the kickoff button and set this all off?
Really depends on how much they can delay, but they cannot deny. And I don't know if I mentioned earlier, but after everything that happened, Ed Bell fired his initial lawyer. fired him, and then he dragged his feet for 8 weeks before naming replacement counsel. He just named replacement counsel on August 15th. And then when I reached out to the guy, he was on leave. He was on vacation until yesterday. So, the fuse is lit. And, the more of these podcasts that I do, start beating the drums. The court is going to act at some point, right? And the judge has had all my material for over 4 months. And there are certain KPIs, right? You can't let a case, linger on a docket, particularly when you put forth as much evidence as I have. So when's it going to happen? I don't know. Am I sure of the outcome? Damn fucking right I am.
So with the different entities that you're looking to support, we work primarily with veterans interested in entrepreneurship. That's one of our big pillars that we discuss on this podcast. We have several different entities. Some of them are nonprofit, some of them are for profit, but both of them provide a similar service of helping veterans get in the driver's seat of different businesses, primarily through entrepreneurship through acquisition. And so on the nonprofit side, we have Owners in Honor. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Patrick Flood, former SF guy. He set up this 501c3 to help act as a education and bridge loan entity. And so they're looking to raise funds that they can then use as a loan to the veteran looking to buy the business. That'll then get recouped through the revenue of the business, get put back into the fund, and then they can continue this process over and over again. The goal is to have about 10 different businesses in the pipeline at a time. So having funds coming in like this that would help put veterans in an ownership position would be absolutely huge. And then on a similar vein, we also work with Clearly Acquired, a group that's essentially trying to build out an MLS for businesses for sale. Like you can right now go and see every house that's listed in the US for sale. You can't do that for businesses that are for sale. It's very localized and business broker dependent. And so they're building out a platform that's hopefully going to attract enough brokers and sellers and buyers all into the same platform to have a snowball effect where, everything's going to ultimately end up there. And they also have education and financing support. So again, getting funds coming in through the Victory Litigation Fund to invest in these business acquisitions, again, by veterans, to keep small businesses alive, to keep them out of the hands of private equity groups that oftentimes either strip them down or essentially monopolize industries in different areas because it buys up all the mom and pop shops. I can already see a wealth of opportunity to allocate these funds to something that's going to directly support and empower the veteran community, and honestly generate significant more wealth for the veteran community, because now when veterans start doing well in business, they can then support more nonprofits, they can support their communities, they can hire more veterans. It all just turns into a much larger success story than the original business acquisition.
You guys are getting it, right? That's the idea, where these VCs that, again, I went to something out in San Francisco in January where, you had a lot of veteran businesses that were looking to raise money, and you had VCs up on the stage. Let's just say my philosophy did not align with theirs, and I will be far more generous in terms in staking companies, not in equity, but through rev share, right? Mm-hmm. And the idea, so there are 3 types of ways that you can fund a company, right? Debt, equity, or rev share. And rev share is superior, right? Debt is usurious and corrosive. Equity, people tend to be pigs, But rev share, you can come up with something where the business owner retains control, right? They're fair in terms of risk reward, and then you set them free, and they're their own person, where they
Mhm.
don't have to bend the knee to anybody. So those are the types of relationships I'm looking to enter into.
Well, that's the problem with venture capital is it has such a, a big
It's sexy.
presence. Yeah, it's sexy. Everyone knows about it. There's so much publicity and media on it. But the reality is that only 3% of businesses actually meet the VC business model of being able to 10x or more and offset all the failed investments that they have, where either they lose money or they basically break even. And so they're just looking for these essentially potential unicorn companies. And most businesses in America don't and will never fit that model of accelerated growth and a 5 to 10 year exit plan. A lot of the vendors that we work with, they want to buy blue collar businesses, excavation companies, paving companies, construction companies, moving companies. None of them are going to ever meet a venture capital or gain venture capital attention. Uh, so having something like this, where the Victory Litigation Fund could essentially sponsor them buying the business, set up a rev share model that recoups the money over however many years, uh, and then puts some money back in the fund for more veterans to continue purchasing businesses. Is the success rate of veterans in ownership roles is staggering. I think it's like 1 out of 7 franchises is owned by a veteran. About 10 to 15% of regular businesses are owned by veterans. And what I see numbers all over the place, but veterans are like what 1 to 5% of society. So very disproportionate in the veteran entrepreneurship space relative to their entirely civilian counterparts.
Let's add another layer to it, right? Because if we've created a cohesive community, all those all those veteran-owned businesses, right, can be advertised to veterans who could then consume the services. So we could set
Mm-hmm.
up a virtuous circle where we're eating our own cooking, right? Because
Yep.
every veteran is going to want to hire a veteran to do the work because they know they can trust them. Not to say that every veteran is
No. No.
you know what I mean? But the likelihood the guy's going to do what he says he's going to do when he says he's going to, guy or gal, let me not discriminate, right? Say they're going to, what they're going to do, they do it, is much higher than in the civilian community. That's where we're building. That's where we're building a cohesive community. Veterans taking care of veterans, right? I happen to I moved. As you can tell from my accent, I'm from New York, but
No.
what I did was I moved to Appalachia, right? I moved here and I have been exposed to the Amish community. And the Amish community has a fabulous society because it's all about barter and taking care of each other. We can do the same thing. The Amish, the Native American tribes,
The
right?
Chinese did the same thing when they came over too. They'd have their communities, they'd pool their money. One family would buy or start a restaurant or some other business. They make money. They put that money back into the community. Now they send that money over to another family. They buy a business, and that's why when you see, I grew up in the Bay Area by San Francisco. You have Chinatown. All those businesses, they weren't able to get loans back in the day. They just self-funded the whole thing, supported each other as a community, and everyone because of it was empowered. Now you have services that you want with an individual that you want to work with, that you know and trust, and that you can keep doing stuff like that. So you can essentially do the same thing with the veteran community of, hey, if you have a successful business as a veteran, donate to this fund. It's a tax write-off for you, so you're just giving less to Uncle Sam. Now that money goes back to other veterans who are looking to buy businesses, who will then donate money to this, and so you create a whole community effect around being a veteran business owner.
Right. And but we needed a treasure chest of cash to kick
Mm-hmm.
that thing off, and that's litigation finance. Litigation finance. It's a $25 billion a year industry that's ripe for hostile takeover.
It's a good way to put it. Veterans are good at piracy. We typically
Tyler Schmoker is now a pirate.
that's
He was
right.
he was a previous guest, Ron, and he just we got to have him back on because this new business idea is incredible. He somehow commandeered a bunch of ships and is now
13 ships.
13 ships, and is now like partnering with the Navy to do a bunch of training. So Tyler, wherever you're at, you pirate you.
Commodore Tyler Schmoker.
Commodore Tyler Schmoker. My other idea, guys, since we're like on this whole veterans, is there a veterans marketplace where you can just like go onto a website and like you would have Ariel Resupply Coffee or like any of these like, smaller logos that are like emerging, but ways to like a centralized place where you can buy consumer product goods. You could search for services in your area. I think there needs to be a website like that.
I've been hit up by a couple people that have mentioned different things of compiling and vetting the different veteran businesses in an area, and then having, I don't know if they would have discounts or whatever it would be, but you can go on and purchase from verified veteran-owned businesses, kind of like a service-disabled veteran-owned small business. But that's really only valuable if you're applying for government contracts. That's other than a feel-good seal of approval. The CVOSB doesn't really help you at all.
I don't like that. I don't like that title. I don't like that veterans, disabled veteran title. What we have been, we have been infantilized. We have been degraded. We are embracing our disabilities when we are so much stronger than that. So I understand why people seek that out to get a contract from the government. I don't hate the player, hate the game, but I am not embracing my disability. I am more than capable than going out and ripping this out of somebody else's hands rather than lining up for the queue, to get the crumbs. So different message, similar concept.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. I like that take.
And so for the veterans looking to help you to do this ground pounding, verification stuff, just reach out to you on LinkedIn. Is there a website with more information on this stuff?
Well, I'm in a bit of an in-between stage here, right? Because when I say I've taken some hits, these guys have made me unemployable, and I'm out of cash. What they tried to do was starve me out. So as you can see from my circumstances here, I'm literally living in a factory, right, in Appalachia, Kentucky, and my son is supporting me. And the only thing they had to take from me was the money, and I don't give a shit. I'm continuing this mission on fumes, right? But we're the warrior that shows up to battle naked, and so they can't take anything else from me but cash. So come to me on LinkedIn, but the first step is for me to win this fight. When I win the fight, then the money will come, right? So don't listen to what I say, watch what I do.
And you mentioned that you're doing crowdfunding. Where can they find the crowdfunding links?
So I have a crowdfunding site. It's on a website called Chainraise. I'll send you guys the link. That's a $5 million Reg CF. Yeah, and again, it has a 67-page Form C, they call it. It has all manner of disclosures of everything that can go wrong. But I made the minimum investment $100 because I wanted to make it like a scratch-off ticket or a weekend at Vegas, you know what I mean? Where you're betting on a prize fight. Litigation finance is complicated. And my revenue share model, you're not getting 10x in the first fight. There are nuances to it. So that all comes through education. And this is the third podcast I've done on the topic. And the first one I did, there was some negative feedback where people were like, oh, this guy's talking about a Ponzi scheme. And I don't want that, right? Number one, it's not accurate. But number two, it's a function of communication and education. So I'd much rather start to develop a relationship with the veteran community for them to vet me, right? So again, I'm coming out, I'm throwing down the gauntlet. It's August 27th, right? I told you I'm in the attack right now. Whenever this goes out and people consume it, watch what I do, right? Believe me, I'll be the first one to let you guys know when I have that signed court order, and now I can start ramping up fundraising and, more importantly, hiring people to get the work done. And the audit, I have it scheduled for calendar year 2025, right? So that's plenty of time to get the order, raise some capital, and then start hiring people to kick off the mission, right? So consider this a warning order.
Hell
like
yeah.
it. So for everyone listening, it's Ron Lasorsa, Lasorsa. Find him on LinkedIn. We'll make sure to have the link for the crowdfunding on the show notes. We'll have any websites and social media linked in there as well. You can just click on, make it super easy for everyone. And we'll be making sure to keep everyone updated as Ron gives us more information on what their status and progress is as they go.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
Thanks, Ron. It was great having you on here, man.
Thank you again so much. I'm really grateful for the opportunity, guys. Thank you for the great conversation.
Absolutely. Likewise.